Welcome to the UIAAA Connection podcast. We thank GoFan and VNN, the exclusive sponsors of the UIAAA Connection. Now operating as one combined company, GoFan and VNN offer a seamless experience through digital ticketing and athletic websites. They make it easy to direct fans to one central place for schedules, communication, and tickets for both home and away events. We appreciate GoFan and VNN for their continued support and exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection podcast.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch-Hunter. Today we have as our special guest, Candace Cayer, the assistant principal at Hacienda La Puente Unified School District and the chair of the District Athletic Director Committee. Welcome to the podcast, Candace.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite.
Let's have you begin by sharing with our audience where you grew up, where you went to college, your first job, etc.
So I grew up in about 5 minutes outside of Los Angeles, downtown LA. So Los Angeles. I spent my entire life, never lived out of state. So I'm a California girl all the way. I participated in high school athletics, playing 3 sports in high school: basketball, volleyball, and track and field. And that led me to go on to get a collegiate scholarship to play at California State University at Los Angeles. And so I played basketball there for the first 2 years I attended the university. And then I played 2 years of volleyball. So I didn't do them simultaneously. I kind of did them back to back. My first job on the campus, well, I didn't work prior to college. So when I got my first job, I actually worked for the Department of Athletics on the campus of Cal State LA. And my primary job was to process grant and aid and scholarship paperwork. So as I moved forward, not knowing in my career that I would become an athletic director, that really helped me understand letters of intent, because I would type them and actually work with them at the collegiate level. I also worked in the athletic trainers room. So I was a double major, physical education and exercise physiology. So both of those jobs were my first 2 jobs. I kind of worked them a little bit like simultaneously for the university.
That's incredible. So go into a little bit more about working with the grant and aid and the scholarship, and maybe some of the secrets you can share from that, or advice for our ADs and some of the athletes that may be listening.
So every offer is different. So when you're doing or the colleges offer letters of intent, you really need to read the fine lines. Depending on your sport and depending on the college too, it depends. Like they'll write in things like you can't ski, or you can't ice skate, or you can't write an ATV, because they're investing all their money in you and they don't want you to get injured when you're on scholarship to play for them. And some of it can be super restrictive. Some will include housing offers, some will include food. So you have to pay attention to the fine lines of the letter of intent, and a verbal doesn't count. You really need to tell athletes to make sure you get a national letter of intent and you put your signature on a dotted line, because that is going to guarantee whatever the offer is. Because some letters of intent are partial too. It's not always a full ride. They'll delineate out 25%, 50%. Some will get full travel. Some will restrict only. They won't pay for your travel. It just varies on program and their availability of what kind of money they have to offer a student athlete.
That's fascinating. Thanks for sharing that. Let's have you talk for a minute, Candace, about some of the mentors and leaders you've had in your life that have made a difference, both as a young lady and now a successful AD.
So I want to go back to, I'll start at the high school level. Well, I'll start at youth sports. I had a particular coach that really made a commitment to me. It didn't matter if my youth practice was over. He was going to extend practice time for me to get down. Like I'll never forget a time he spent 2 extra hours with me shooting free throws. My his goal for me was 10 out of 10. I kept missing on 8. I kept missing on 9. It took me 2 hours to hit 10 out of 10. And I think I was like maybe 14 years old at the time, but he was my first mentor that made that commitment to me and wouldn't let me give up, which really kind of taught me a lot about paying it forward when I became a coach to young athletes that wanted to put in the extra work and the extra time. When I got to college, I had a stellar coach that recruited me. She was also the co-athletic director at Cal State LA. Her name was Carol Dunn. And she really instilled in me hard work, learning adversity, not giving up, and really, really focused on you as the total person. So in my freshman year of college, I got the chicken pox. And it was really bad. I got it from another athlete in the training room, and it became kind of like this mini epidemic amongst the athletes at Cal State LA that year. And she even gave me my finals in seclusion, even though I was sick. So she also extended that extra effort and care that went beyond just the game to you. And then I had my professional former principal, Paul Bright. He was president of the California Interscholastic Federation in the Southern section. He was our section president, but he was also one of my principals who kind of pushed me to really go out there and understand that I could do anything for an athlete. Just put the time in, just listen to them. They'll see your passion of your work through what you do, and then it'll like transfer to them. And so at the time that he convinced me to come back to coaching, I was the president of the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim Booster Club, the professional hockey organization. So I had like him pull me back into high school coaching, and eventually he was the mentor, and he still to this day continues to be my mentor to push athletics forward. We went up to Sacramento, and I spoke before the Education Senate because of him to like CIF gets reauthorized every so many years so that they are still the governing body of high school sport in California. And there was a contingent of probably like 15 of us that went up to Sacramento that year. What an experience it was to see the Senate Education Committee and be able to speak before them.
That's awesome. That is awesome. All right. Let me ask you a little bit of a personal question here. What's your biggest failure or disappointment in life, and what did you learn from it?
I think my biggest failure was when I was a rookie athletic director. I mean, if I come to my personal career, it had to have been my rookie year. And I had a really unique situation where an athlete was a fifth-year senior, but he was only 15 because he had been raised in a foreign country. And when the district took his enrollment in, they coded him incorrectly on his transcript. So he never flagged on age requirement. He never flagged on, credits or anything like transcript wise, because they put his credits in amassed into like a junior year. So it looked like he was like a first time senior. And what it did was it forced us to give up 5 games, right? Half of the season for the games that he played in. And it forced a first-year head football coach to not be able to go to the playoffs when he had earned the right to go to the playoffs technically. And it forced a 3-way tie for playoffs in the league, which went down to a coin flip. And to be quite honest, the best team lost the coin flip out. What a hard experience as a rookie athletic director. And back then, there were not that many female athletic directors. So not a lot of female athletic directors played football, right? So you can just see the public perception of that whole experience of making such a grave mistake. I then asked the district to create a 13-year code so that it wouldn't happen to future athletic directors, or there was a way to code transcripts differently when students come from a foreign country, because I didn't want somebody else to have to experience what I went through. And that was a huge disappointment because I felt that the athletes of 3 other schools were also affected, not just the athlete of my own school.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's and so what happened to this kid? He just went on to just graduated, and that's that, or
Yeah, he graduated. He just he lost his, like technically he wasn't recruited. He wasn't that caliber of player, but it had, because the only way that we were able to figure out was I literally had to call him in to my office and say, "Are you in your 5th year of high school?" Because he came from American Samoa.
okay.
So it just kind of created it taught me a lesson too as an athletic director, that every year I would line up my athletes then just on a chance after that experience and say to them, please tell me you are not in your 5th year of playing in high school, because I was so scarred from that experience that I learned that I had to put secondary things into place just to make sure that we would never have something like that again.
That's that's incredible. Thanks for sharing that. Let's have you talk for a minute now about the job of AD. And so, uh, tell me when your first year as AD was. What year was that?
So I'm in my 35th year of education, my 22nd as an assistant principal, and my first year as an athletic administrator was 22 years ago. So I've always kind
Okay.
of carried this athletic director slash AP title. It's
Hmm.
been very rare for me to do one but not the other. It seems
Right.
to, for some reason, paired up with me for the majority of my career. So you're talking about 22 years ago, and how have things
So,
changed?
and how have things changed since 22 years ago? Yeah, particularly in California.
So 22 years ago, there was a lot less legislation that you had to like make sure that we were following. So even upon coach hiring, we didn't have to do like that. There was no heat illness, certifications. There was no, you may have needed CPR and first aid, but you didn't need AED training. You didn't need
Hmm.
to know how to respond to emergencies, and personally, that alone is just an elevated step. And I don't know, I can share with your viewers that my husband suffered a cardiac arrest on the field, and we were able to invoke emergency plans that were practiced to save him and bring him back from a 4% heart function that night. But that was because the schools were prepared, right? And so back then, we didn't have that. We didn't have, I think, the level of parent expectations, because club wasn't infusing itself into high school athletics as much as we're seeing it today. We're also not seeing this push that parents and athletes believe that they could all play at the next level when the percentages are really, low. Like
Right.
Jack Rankins, who does the recruiting realities, will tell you it's less than 10% that get recruited to play, at the next level. So I think earlier in my career, the compliance issues, they weren't as stringent. The expectation from the community and parents were not as stringent. And then, like, what we know today, we didn't know back then. So I always say, like, athletic directors don't necessarily know what they don't know at the beginning when they're first starting their career, I being one of them. And so you see how it's evolved. It's evolved into social media. Okay. We didn't have social media like we do now. We're reporting scores out on Twitter and X, right? It's X,
Yeah.
and you're doing all the social media, Instagram, Snapchat. You're pushing all kinds of like information about your school out, and we didn't have that before 22 years ago. It has evolved greatly for an athletic director. I can't imagine for an athletic director not to be full time anymore, or at least have co's if your school isn't willing to put forth a full-time athletic director because of the sheer number of responsibilities, just athletic clearance alone. You got to clear
Mm.
every single athlete. I cleared, when I was at my former school, I cleared 900 athletes by myself. I had no secretary. I bring in a doctor to do physicals, but then I'm processing all that paperwork. So I can just imagine, my school was a school of 1,600. If you're at a school of 3,000 to 4,000 and your athletes are through the roof, who's helping you with all of that? It's a lot.
No, that's well said. Thank you for sharing that, and for our district administrators that are listening out there. I hope they listen to that part about you can't be a part-time AD and you do the job properly. So thank you for that. Let me have you talk about the CSADA, how you became involved in that, and then obviously eventually on to the NIAAA. Of course, that's where we met. So talk about that and how that whole thing happened 22 years ago.
So prior to my 22 years, California State Athletic Directors Association had a cohort of like maybe 5 to 10 mentor athletic directors that saw a vision to put educational based athletics forward. And this group of like 10 athletic directors from Northern and Southern California came together to decide that, hey, we need to help new athletic directors. So I was very fortunate that one of the athletic directors in Pomona Unified School District, which is where my mentor, Paul Wright, was a principal and I worked, said, you need to get involved. Same conversation. You don't know what you don't know. Come on. And it started with me participating in our local athletic director association. So we have something called the Foothill Citrus Athletic Director Association, which governs 42 schools in the LA basin, kind of like San Gabriel Valley / inland. Like we're kind of like in this little area of Southern California. And that athletic director, Joel Weiss, was also on the board of CSADA. And he was the one outreaching to all the new athletic directors to say, you need to get involved with California State ADs Association. And that's where I was so fortunate to meet Gene Ashton and Sue Saunders. Okay, Sue Saunders became a principal eventually up in Northern California, and Gene obviously being from Salinas. And they brought in that open arms, welcoming, come join us and get involved. And that's what really made me like, you're that little fish in the pond and you're a little intimidated at the beginning to get involved. But with their open, warm, invitation, it only made you want to start participating. So I started to attend state conferences. I became an ambassador. I did some breakout sessions. I've been a state speaker. And then eventually, like really quick, like within a year, Gene was like, you need to join the NIAAA. And I'm like, well, what's that? And they're like, well, you think we're on the state level? This is the national level. And that is what really opened up taking LTI classes, really like learning that some of the plights of California are being seen across the country in other locations. And there are some things you can learn from people across the country to bring to California that California necessarily wasn't doing first. And so the emergency network is also something that is so special for the NIAAA. And I don't know if athletic directors know that once you're part of the NIAAA, you're able, if you're in an emergency situation, to contact a cohort of people in any state that's open arms welcoming you to help you in the event that there is an emergency for you or your family. And that is something so unique to the NIAAA that doesn't really exist. And so the professional development piece for both CSADA and NIAAA really allowed me to grow as a professional and to build lifetime friendships with people like you, Hutch, that we look forward to seeing, every time we go to national conference and it's sharing stories and experiences.
That is awesome. Now, I want you to reflect upon at the NIAAA level, obviously, if I'm not mistaken, you're still the chair of the endowment committee. And then, so after you talk about that, I want you to talk about your unofficial assignment as keeper of the minutes at the Section 7 meeting at the National Conference. Two separate issues. I'll turn it over to you.
So I first really started to get involved at the NIAAA level because I was part of the 4th strategic plan. So, and I have a background in budgeting and finance, and that becomes something that athletic directors don't get a lot of professional development in, especially when you go to state rules and regulations fiscally. I just happen to have it as like a little niche. And so what subcommittee did I get on at the NIAAA strategic plan was the Budget and Finance Committee. And so I think that that experience, because the NIAAA Endowment Committee is the one that is in charge of the National Endowment. So what we do is we raise money, right, to go into the National Endowment so that states can apply for grants and outreach for new athletic directors to attend conference, get professional development. And so I started as a member of the committee. Then I became the vice chair of the committee. And then I became the chair of the committee. So we are going to be entering, I believe it is my 14th or 15th year on the committee, because I really believe in raising this money so that athletic directors can get the professional development they need, especially when they're newer in their careers. And so I like my mentors on the endowment committee before, like Kevin Horrigan is out of Indiana, and he was one of the founding committee members, along with our leadership at the NIAAA, that really like told you about what was so important about the endowment committee. And that is the professional development piece and that responsibility to pay it forward.
That's awesome. Now talk about and I'm not sure how you got this job, but probably Sister Lynn, I don't know, but talk about your unofficial job as the keeper of the minutes at the Section 7 meeting at the National Conference.
So I believe it started when Tina Tamura was the CSADA president, and she was kind of approached through, and the Section 7. So for those of you who don't know Section 7, it's Arizona, Utah, Hawaii, Nevada, California. We make up Section 7. And when the leadership took the helm, it was like, hey, we need somebody to take the minutes. Well, I'm so used to taking minutes from my own district meetings that I was just like, okay, I'll take the minutes. And it's kind of like just stuck since then. No matter how much the leadership changes at the top, I always get the message every year, hey, Candace, are you going to take our section minutes? And so again, it's all about paying it forward, right? Like someone did it for us, so now it's my turn to pay it forward to help like further on what we do now for the next generation to come.
That's awesome. Now I want you to talk. Now, when I talk about these people, these are the people I got to know. You would be amongst them, but talk about working with people, California legends, the late Sherry Ross, Roger Blake. You mentioned Gene, even like Herb Meyer, Ray Moore, Ralph Trigstead, um, Jim Perry. I mean, all of these, and I'm sure there's a ton I'm missing. So, my California people, forgive me for not mentioning everybody, but talk about just the wealth of leadership that's there in California and being able to work with them.
So I call them the A team, right? They are the founders of pushing forward athletics to the forefront of educators' minds that may not have put us at the forefront. I got a lot of encouragement from Sherry Ross to submit my CMA project, right? And so I did it on dealing with difficult parents. It was like started to like evolve at that time. Roger Blake, our CIF executive state director, and Maria Shida, right? She was the predecessor before him. They were constantly encouraging the get involved, and to take initiatives that may not be maybe the best in public perception and find the solution to make it work. And it was always the don't give up, stick to your guns, like find the way to draw people to your cause. And so they really pushed that thought to so that I could go out to my districts. So some of the tricks were like getting on the superintendent's calendar, doing budget proposals. This is the cost of athletics. this is the cost of athletics to invest in athletics versus a lawsuit payout if we didn't invest in athletics. So I did a lot of, took a lot of what they taught me and the hard conversations, and it made it a little less scary as long as you were prepared. And people like Jean, who just constantly push forward the work in athletics and is the consummate role model. Ray Moore locally came from our area. He was an athletic director that was in a neighboring district to mine. And it's the same thought pattern, like get out there, get out there, get involved. The more you're involved, the more resources you have when you're dealing with a difficult situation, and you could get some ideas on how to solve it. You know, our former CIF Southern Section Commissioner, Rob Wygod, was that person, you know, but he did it with being very personable. And he taught you that you had to be like, he would model that personable attitude, because the more personable you are, the more people will flock to help you when you're in crisis and you need that support. And so these people just went above and beyond and continue to do the work even behind the scenes to guide you and to keep pushing forward and making it better.
Great insight. Thanks for sharing that. Let me have you talk to our audience about your observations about the recent conference that we had. Well, recent, probably 3 months ago in Tampa. And obviously, as everyone knows, we got not rained out, we got COVIDed out the first time we were supposed to be there. So this was everybody's first time. And I've heard nothing but good things about Tampa. Wondering your thoughts about the Tampa conference.
I was pleasantly surprised by the city of Tampa and the surrounding area to the convention center. It was really accessible I mean, there were those hotels that were very close by, and there were some like literally on the perimeter, but it was still like a really nice place to go. The water view, where you can go out of a professional development class and you could step onto the to the patio area and just you're literally on the water at that point. The hospitality of the people in Tampa and the host committee, they did a good job of putting forward a good conference with the NIAAA in Tampa. I'd like to see it go back there at some
Yeah,
point, because I think every year we're setting our record for more and more attendees, and I think that going back to Arizona this year, if you're a golfer, the endowment committee is going to put on a golf tournament again. You know, it's really a good place to network, and they're picking cities that I think are really like inviting, not just to the athletic director, but their families. And that whole shopping complex, literally near the waterway in Tampa, I think that was a really good draw for families as well.
perfect. What's your favorite part of your job, Candace?
I have two favorite parts. The first part is obviously the students. I've lived on being very close to the students. So as part of my assistant principal role, believe it or not, I'm the discipline assistant principal. I've done curriculum for 18 years, but at this particular school, I've been asked to kind of do discipline, but that discipline allows you to connect with students on a different level. And some of those, a lot of them are athletes, because they're so high energy that they tend to need that extra guidance. And so working with the students and seeing them grow, they may have from freshman year to senior year to seeing them being recruited to playing at the next level to playing professional sports. That is just like one of my favorite parts of my job. My second part is supporting my staff. I have always like had as my administrative philosophy that you are the like person in the middle that takes initiatives and has to make it manageable for your staff. And if they're having any difficulties, then you have to try to support them with that. So when I see them overcome challenges as well, it's so gratifying for me to see them grow even as professionals. So it's that collegiality that I really like.
Thank you. Let's finish up with a couple of questions. The first one being this. You've got 2 suggestions for a brand new AD, and they need to follow Candace's 2 suggestions in order to become successful. What would your 2 suggestions be?
Number one is the professional development piece. Get involved. Join your local AD association, your state association, and definitely be a part of the NIAAA. You can't go wrong. That's my first suggestion, because you don't know what you don't know when you're starting out, and people can help you with that. But you have to be involved to be able to get those suggestions and ideas and have that backing. My second suggestion is, no matter what, communicate with your principal. So anytime you have any kind of challenge, small or big, you have to involve your principal. Your communication with them is going to set you apart from the next person, because with that communication comes your organization. It's going to fall into place. And so I really believe that those 2 things are really critical when you're an AD.
Great suggestions. Thank you for sharing. We'll finish with this. Candace, what questions should I have asked you that I failed to ask?
I think it's, how do you manage your personal time from work time? That would be the question.
Let's have you answer that.
Well, it's a balance. And I think earlier in my career, I didn't do a good balance. And I'm going to make a plug. So the NIAAA, we have an LTI class called Stress Management. I am one of the instructors for that national course. And it really does teach you how to even take small moments of time out of your day to refocus yourself, and to realize that sometimes you need to triage what can wait till the next day, so that you can get away, walk away, take that break, because family is just as important as your job, and you can't survive if you don't have your family behind you. And I'm very fortunate. I'm married to an athletic director, and he was one of my former coaches long time ago. So talk about work-life balance. We've managed to do that pretty well, actually. So it's a learned skill, but there are classes in the NIAAA that can help with that. And also your colleagues can also share some techniques with you. But that would be the question that I would say that you would have to ask.
That is well said. And on that note, since I can't improve on that answer, that wraps up this edition of the UIAAA Connection. Again, our special guest today has been Candace Cayer, Certified Master Athletic Administrator, the Assistant Principal at Hacienda La Puente Unified School District, and the Chair of the District Athletic Directors Committee. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, Candace.
Thank you.
For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.